Hello, my name is Christina Kendall and I am a vision rehabilitation therapist at the Northeastern Association of the Blind at Albany, also known as NABA. A vision rehabilitation therapist, also known as VRT, is someone who typically has a master's degree in the field of blindness and low vision, and we instruct people to become independent or maintain their independence of people who are blind and visually impaired as much as possible, either at home or in school or at the work site. So today what we're going to talk about are some methods for helping your everyday tasks be enhanced by the use of lighting and contrast and large print and a little bit of voice. So we're going to start with some items in the kitchen, and we're going to talk about lighting and the effect that it has on your work that you do around the house. We're going to start with the kitchen. The type of lighting that you need will be based on the kind of vision impairment that you have, as well as the task that you're doing. So you might need one kind of lighting to illuminate a room, but you might need another kind of lighting to illuminate a certain task that you're doing, for example, writing a check. A lot of people today like the LED lighting. It's the brightest lighting you can get, and it's sort of the 21st century bulb. But there are other kinds of lighting as well, fluorescent and incandescent. So it really just depends on the task that you're doing and how it affects your vision. So we're going to start today with showing you how lighting can affect things in the kitchen. Today we have some plates, some bowls, some cups, and we have them under some very high fluorescent lighting. And you can see as you're looking at the plates, and I know it might be a little bit difficult to see it virtually, but there we have a lot of glare and reflection on the plates. And sometimes someone needs a lot of lighting, and even though there might be a little bit of glare, they find the bright lights to be very helpful for when they're doing their tasks. But if that's too much lighting, something that you might be able to install in your kitchen is something like a dimmer switch, and this would allow you to bring the lighting down much lower, reduce the reflection and the glare in the kitchen, and might make seeing a little bit easier. So having a dimmer switch in your home is something that can be very helpful. I'm going to bring the lighting back up, and we're also going to talk about the use of contrast. And what we have here, we'll start with this white plate. If you have a table or a countertop that's a light color like this, and you have a white plate, sometimes that can really blend in so much so that when someone is trying to manage their plate, cut their food, move things around, they can spill things off to the side. And so it can be helpful to get a plate that has a contrast around the edge so that that person can actually define the edges of the plate. It's helpful to have a couple of different colors of plates and bowls, etc. Here's an example of a red bowl, and this stands out against a lighter background. If you pour something light into this bowl, maybe some milk for cereal, or you have oatmeal in there that's a lighter color, rice, if you're baking and you want to put some sugar in a bowl like this, it will enhance the contrast. Conversely, on the black plate, you might want to put things like mashed potatoes, some chicken, lighter colors of food that stand out more against the black background. For something like coffee, you might want to have some white mugs around. So again, once the coffee is in there, the dark against the white really enhances the contrast and makes it easier to see. However, for lighter colored items, a dark mug might be better. So white milk might show up in a darker mug more easily. So it's helpful to have a combination of colors in the kitchen so that you can control that contrast. And you can see once we put a food item on the plate, for example, celery shows up a little bit on the white plate, but shows up quite a bit more on the black plate. So you can see how playing with the colors there can really help to enhance what you're looking at. Over here to the right, we have something like a cutting board. So people who are slicing vegetables, you may be preparing some meats, things like that. They might want to have some control over the amount of contrast they have. So again, we'll use our celery here on the white background. It contrasts a little bit, But if you had something brightly colored, for example, a tomato or a dark cucumber, that would really show up against the white cutting board. This cutting board has a black side. And here I think you can see that the celery is enhanced quite a bit more on the black side. So if you had some white onions or orange carrots, they might stand out more against the black. And here at NABA we have countertops that contrast. Most people don't have that. So you can see that over here on the lighter countertop, the black cutting board actually stands out by itself as well. But if you can't play around with too much contrast on your countertops, you can even use black placemats, black cloth, dishcloth, darker colored tablecloth, anything that will help enhance the work area a little bit. So those are some ideas for enhancing items with lighting and contrast. The other thing that's sometimes difficult for people in the kitchen, especially if there's a large family or just other people that come into the home a lot, is locating items in the kitchen. So what we sometimes suggest, if there are a lot of people in the house, to maybe have a specific place, a cupboard or a specific place in the refrigerator, so the person with low vision or blindness can access their daily items a bit more easily. So one idea we have here is a cupboard. This is a low cupboard that might work for a child or someone who's not very tall. And we just have some common items that person might need to access. For example, peanut butter, some tuna fish, we have some nuts. And on the lower shelf, we actually have some bowls and some spoons. Again, if the cupboard that has these items is really overcrowded or the drawer is really overcrowded, this will just help that person to access things more easily and more independently rather than trying to go all over the kitchen. We're going to go over to the refrigerator and we'll just show you what we've done in there. Refrigerators can be very crowded and confusing. So in this case, we just have one drawer. You can even put the person's name on this drawer to remind everybody not to stuff other things in there. And again, we just have some common things that you might have: some drinks, some sandwich items. You could put a couple of cold cuts. And again, that person would always be able to know that they can come into one location and find what they need rather than dealing with a very crowded refrigerator. So those are some ideas that you might have in the kitchen. We're going to go on to some non-kitchen areas and have our camera follow us over here. And what we have here are some common everyday items that people typically use but struggle with. So here we have an example of a large print calendar. Not only is it large, but it's high contrast. So whenever you can find ways to make things larger and bolder, there are things that are available at NABA, but there are also things available out there on the internet as well. So these boxes are also big enough to write your appointments and reminders in very large, bold print, which is important as well. Over here we have an example of bold line paper for people who want to write notes, lists, letters, but they can't stay on the lines. This paper, again, used along with a very bold pen, can help someone maintain these basic writing tasks. This is sometimes a good thing to have next to a phone for phone numbers, or so the person can take a few notes if they're getting information from a doctor's office. Something I have here on top of the pad is called a signature guide, and I'm just showing it against this white paper so it stands out. But this allows someone to have this placed on maybe a medical document or a legal document, and it allows them to stay in the space so that they can write straight and maintain their independence with signing their own documents. Okay. Over this pad here, we do have an example of a large print landline phone. Again, large buttons, but also very high contrast. So not a lot of bells and whistles on a phone like this. It does get plugged into a jack, not an outlet. But this makes sure someone can actually dial out a lot more easily than struggling and making a lot of mistakes on their phone. I just want to say a little bit about cell phones while we're talking about phones. People are all over the place with how much they use cell phones. There are large print flip phones, for example, through the Jitterbug company. So if someone just wants a very basic, chunky kind of phone, that is an option. There are also on your iPhones and your Samsung phones, in the general settings, there is something called accessibility. And if you go into accessibility, there's a section on vision where you can make the print larger, the print bolder. There are ways to learn how to use your cell phone for voice operations as well. That takes quite a bit more instruction, but it can be done for someone who has no vision at all, for example. So there are definitely things to look at when you're shopping around for cell phones. In terms of telling time, I'm actually modeling an example of a large print watch. And I think you can see by the scale of my wrist that it's taking up most of my wrist. But again, this is just a very basic phone, just very basic, high contrast, again, large print numbers for telling time. If someone needs a little more assistance, we can go audio. And this doesn't really look like a clock, but I'm going to press it here.
The time is 11:33 a.m.
And again.
The date is September 25, Friday.
So there's a very basic battery-operated talking clock for someone who's beyond large print. And then these are just a few other common items. This is a large print register for people who still want to maintain their own checkbook. Even if someone else is doing this work, if they put it in large bold print, that person can usually access that with a magnifier. This is an example of a large print pillbox. These can be purchased in a lot of places these days, even Walmart, and you can get pillboxes that are even larger than this. Again, if you can enhance the contrast as much as possible from the letters to the box, that's helpful. And some of them also are multiple tiered. This is just an example of a single tier once a day regimen. Up top here, we do have a large print timer. If someone's not using their phone for a timer, this is something that can be used for cooking, exercise routines. Maybe you're on a medication regimen and you have to take something every 30 minutes or whatever. That's something that can be helpful for reminding people about time. And finally here, we just have some examples of some recreational items. So some people still like to play bingo, and this is a large print high contrast bingo card. And we have the large print playing cards as well. And we have, again, the spades and the hearts are typical of what you'd see on a normal size deck. These cards are of standard size, so they're not any bigger than a regular playing card. Diamonds are green because a lot of people did get them mixed up with the hearts. Clubs are blue because a lot of people did confuse them with the spades. So it adds a little bit of color contrast as well. So those are just some typical examples of some things that we might be able to assist someone who is legally blind with around the house. You can always call if you have questions. And again, my name is Christina Kendall. I just want to show you my information in large print here. My phone number at the agency is 518-463-1211, and my extension is 240. And again, I am a vision rehabilitation therapist. Thank you very much for listening today.